is Notsam Wrestling.
Introducing your host from New York, here is Sam Roberts.
There will be moments in this show that benefit from not having an audience. It's just true. There will be moments in the show that it completely takes away the fact that there's no audience, of course. But why sit there and think about the moments that won't be as good when we can think about the moments that will be better? Why not celebrate this thing that we're all watching as an escape? Everybody's, you can't deal with reality, so why go to this world of fantasy and try to make it worse when you could be enjoying it? You know what I mean? I want to go by and just go match by match for what is actually a pretty decent WrestleMania card, in my opinion. And we'll talk more about the promos that have been on Raw and SmackDown and the lead up to this thing as we go. Match by match. I think that that's the way to do it. So first matchup, and I think I kind of put these in order of what I'm looking forward to the most, is Aleister Black versus Bobby Lashley. I think this one, I don't know what Bobby Lashley kind of expected when he came back to WWE, but I don't think it would make a lick of sense to have Bobby Lashley come even close to winning this match. I think that this is simply an exhibition. This is a display for Aleister Black on the biggest show of the year. I think that this is not the most complicated match in the world. There's no backstory whatsoever to it. This is just, okay, we've been watching Aleister Black beat up enhancement talent on Raw, so let's go to WrestleMania and watch him beat up a pretty established guy. And I think that's all it is, And Aleister Black, his matches have been short, but his matches on Raw have been highlights. He's been able to get his character over and put on compelling segments that are, 2 to 3 minutes long, however long they are, and that's all they need to be. The quiet works for a character like Aleister Black. It's okay. You don't need all the other stuff. So this match, I don't predict it going very long, and I predict Aleister Black to have a dominant victory over Bobby Lashley. You've got the Tag Team Championship match that was just changed this week on Raw. So and we'll talk about this. There are matches on this show that may still be changed. We're doing our March to WrestleMania show before SmackDown airs because you've got 22 hours between SmackDown and WrestleMania. WrestleMania Saturday and Sunday, I believe they're both starting at 7 p.m. Eastern on the network. And you've got a kickoff show before each one that I think start at 6, which I won't be on either kickoff show, so I don't know who's going to watch them. But the Street Profits are now defending the Raw Tag Team Championship against Austin Theory and Angel Garza, who will, of course, have Zelina Vega in their corner. Now, this was supposed to be Andrade and Angel Garza. Andrade injured his rib, so he was replaced at the last minute by Austin Theory. Not the biggest deal in the world because Angel Garza and Andrade were, barely even a team before this anyway. So I think this is another example of an exhibition of characters. This is just a let's have the good guys win at WrestleMania moment for the Street Profits. I think that's all it is. But I think it should be mentioned that I already thought this was a big deal when I was like, Angel Garza is now getting a WrestleMania match. That's pretty big for somebody who started the year. I mean, he was on the NXT roster and just kind of without incident, Andrade went out for 30 days and Angel Garza came in, picked up and, impressed people enough that he's sticking around on Raw. So first, him having a WrestleMania match I thought was a big deal, but a much bigger deal is the fact that Austin Theory, who we just saw Evolve had a special on the WWE Network not too long ago, and that was the first time we saw him. We've seen him a handful of times in NXT, primarily losing matches, and now he's got a championship match at WrestleMania, a tag title match. I mean, that's a big deal for Austin Theory. You know, he's going to have a lot of eyes. Regardless of what you say about WrestleMania, in terms of WWE Network views, there's going to be a lot of people that watch WrestleMania. You know, is it going to get the same numbers that like Raw gets? I don't know about all that, but you know, this is why people have the network. And I think WWE has done a lot of advertising for WrestleMania this year. You know, they're not trying to bury it and say, okay, let's just get it done and keep it moving. They're trying to make a spectacle out of it, you know. Becky Lynch did a ton of press. She was on this podcast. I know Seth Rollins has done a ton of press. Triple H has done a ton of press. He was on Robbie Barstool's podcast. He was on Pat McAfee's podcast. He was on ESPN, on SportsCenter. He was going to do this podcast, but I talked to him, and he said, let's save it for when Primetime Wrestling starring Triple H and Sam Roberts debuts. I was like, Paul, that's a good idea. He said, thanks, Sam. Call me Triple H. I said, okay, you got it, Trips. He said, Triple H is fine. I said, you got it, Mr. Triple H. So I think that this is going to be Street Profits. You know, I think that you know, I would probably say that maybe one night you open with Bobby Lashley versus Aleister Black. The next night you open with Street Profits versus Angel, Garza, and Austin Theory. But big step forward for Austin Theory for sure. Baron Corbin versus Elias. This match was made, I guess, 2 weeks ago on SmackDown. Not a ton of backstory again, except that Baron Corbin is a bad guy and Elias is a good guy. Elias was singing his song. It annoyed Baron Corbin. So now they're going to fight. You know, I really think Baron Corbin needs this victory badly. You know, I don't think that when Elias, it was interesting because when Elias was a bad guy, he was like a main event level bad guy. Like he wasn't world title contention, but he was top of the card bad guy. You know, he was, I mean, a year ago at WrestleMania, John Cena and him had a physical altercation. He was the one that was pegged, not to have a match, but to have a physical altercation with John Cena. So, you know, I think that he's certainly become more of an entertainment act now that he's a good guy. He hasn't won a huge number of matches. You know, he had some trouble getting his hands on the 24/7 championship, and since then has kind of abandoned any hope whatsoever. For Elias to beat Baron Corbin, I think it would really cement Baron Corbin's fate as a guy, and probably his faith in God too. But it would probably cement Baron Corbin's fate as somebody who's here to be a big, credible bad guy who gets booed, but inevitably is going to lose every match to a good guy. And a guy like that, you can have him having matches with Elias, but you can't put him in the main event, you know. Baron Corbin just spent what feels like 3 years losing every week to Roman Reigns. So I think that it would serve him really well to go to WrestleMania this year and remind people that he is fully capable of also winning matches, especially against people like Elias. So for me, this should be all Baron Corbin. I still think that this match should be taking place in a concert venue or dress up some area of Full Sail like it's a concert venue or something. But an empty concert venue, I still think is the place for this match. But either way, no matter where it takes place, it should be all Baron Corbin, top to bottom. We'll go with the Women's Tag Team Championship. You've got the Kabuki Warriors versus Alexa Bliss and Nikki Cross. We haven't seen Kairi Sane in quite a while, but all the internet rumor report websites are saying that she'll be there, so I'm sure she will. You know, I mean, I like the Kabuki Warriors as women's tag team champions. I like the Kabuki Warriors. I think Asuka's new mic work has made Asuka even more interesting. You know, Asuka was in this spot where it was like, for a year, first Asuka turning heel was a very good thing, because from the Royal Rumble of last year until the time that Asuka turned heel, she really didn't have a lot going on. And at some of that time, she was actually the SmackDown Women's Champion. But she really was background noise for most of last year. Becoming a villain, teaming with Kairi Sane, bringing back the Green Mist, becoming this character, I think has done Asuka a world of good. I think lately adding the the crazy talking to everything, going over to the commentary booth, shouting in Japanese. Love it. Love every time Asuka's on the screen. I've been a huge Asuka fan since NXT. So whatever we can add to Asuka to make it work better on the main roster, I'm in favor of. I think that everything has been working. However, I think that it's been working so well that Asuka could probably... I think that Raw's women's division at this point could use the female star power. I think having Asuka and Kairi Sane as singles competitors in the Raw women's division is better for the Raw women's division than having them as a team, especially because nobody is competing for these women's tag team championship. I mean, you don't see women's tag team matches except when they defend the titles once every quarter. So, I don't think that the Kabuki Warriors having the title, if anything, it's better to have the Kabuki Warriors be a well-known team and not be the tag team champions. Because right now, the Kabuki Warriors being a known entity and being the champions leaves you with a grand total of 1 women's tag teams. If Nikki Cross and Alexa Bliss were to win the tag championship, you would be cementing the two of them as a tandem. The Kabuki Warriors would still be a team. And now you got 2 tag teams, and we can build from there. Maybe the Iconics could exist again. You'd have 3 tag teams, You could kind of slowly start to build this thing back up. But I think that it is time for the Kabuki Warriors to lose those titles and to become bigger as single stars. And I think that it would certainly add a lot to Alexa Bliss and Nikki Cross to that whole act if they had those titles with them when they did Moment of Bliss and whatnot. It would remind everybody that they're wrestlers, not just, talk show hosts. And I think that everybody would be happy because people like Alexa Bliss and Nikki Cross. So that's my pick for that tag match. Moving on. Yeah, I thought we missed one. You get the big grudge match. The match settled. That's going to settle everything. Dolph Ziggler, who will have Mandy Rose in his corner, against Otis. Otis getting the big singles match at WrestleMania. Kind of a surprise to me. I figured that they would keep encapsulating the tag teams. In my mind, I had a SmackDown Tag Team Championship triple threat match in my head, which was Miz and Morrison versus Heavy Machinery versus Bobby Roode and Dolph Ziggler. And that would make it so that not only could Heavy Machinery and Otis get his revenge on Dolph, but they could leave tag team champions, which I think people would be really psyched about. But that's not the case. Look, I think that you have to have a lot of good guys winning at WrestleMania this year more than ever. Every WrestleMania, you have a lot of good guys winning, right? That's what WrestleMania is. But this year more than ever, number one, it's got to be a feel-good WrestleMania. And number two, realistically, can we leave WrestleMania thinking, oh, he'll get him next time? When is next time going to be? I don't know. I don't even know if the state's open. You know what I mean? The weird time that we're in right now, we don't know what wrestling looks like immediately after WrestleMania. So I don't think you could do a lot of cliffhangers. I think you kind of got to, at least short-term, settle what you're settling. I think Mandy Rose is hella popular. I think it's a thing. When you have somebody who's as attractive as Mandy Rose, there is this idea, well, we could make her a bad guy, and every guy that could never get a date with her will boo her, and every girl that could never look like her will boo her. It's like when Sable came out. She was like, all the women want to be me, and all the men came to see me. And, you're a bad guy, and you get booed, and that works. However, I think that people want to cheer Mandy Rose. I think also that same psychology of fans want to boo Mandy Rose because they couldn't date her in high school. The reason they want to boo her is because they wanted to date her in high school, and they want to believe that it gets better. They want to believe that there is this world where once we get out of high school, once we get into the real world, that somebody like me could date this knockout, could date this 10. And somebody like me is Otis. I think that you got to have that feel-good moment. Look, people were invested. This storyline was going on at the same time as the Rusev, Lana, Bobby Lashley storyline. And aside from the wedding segment, which to me the wedding segment worked, and I really actually liked the wedding segment, but the storyline itself was a flop. People were much more invested in this storyline than they were in the Rusev, Lana, Lashley storyline because they wanted it to work. People want to see Otis and Mandy Rose as an on-screen couple. And I think that you got to have the resolution here at WrestleMania. I think you got to leave people going home happy. And I think you got to have this moment where Mandy Rose maybe has this aha realization where she realizes that Dolph Ziggler is a scumbag and that Dolph was manipulating her the whole time. You know, we get some clarification on maybe her text or whatever was lost or whatever, whatever happened. And I think that you gotta have Mandy Rose turn on Dolph and side with Otis. And then I think the future of that is you can go to Raw. So here's what I love. I really like the idea of going to SmackDown from this. And again, like we said, we don't know what short term looks like. But in terms of story after this, I would have Mandy go with Otis, have the feel-good moment. We all feel great at home. You can only imagine. Can you imagine what that pop would be in Tampa in the stadium? It would be like Macho and Liz at WrestleMania 7. If Mandy turned on Dolph, Otis beat Dolph, and then Mandy and Otis embrace and kiss in a stadium full of people, they would lose their minds. They'd be so happy for Otis. It would be amazing. We can't have them kiss. We don't have an audience full of people. I get it. We can still have that moment where Otis and Mandy do come together as a union. And then I love the idea of going forward, Dolph now can't really compete with Otis because, he's country strong. And having Sonya Deville kick Otis in the face and finding out that Sonya Deville is not Dolph Ziggler's girlfriend, is Dolph Ziggler's bodyguard. And you don't have to use the term bodyguard because it's been done before, but the idea of Sonya Deville being Dolph Ziggler's muscle, and then you've got the Mandy Rose and Sonya don't like each other. You've got Dolph Ziggler and Otis don't like each other. You got Dolph Ziggler as the chicken heel because he's got Sonya Deville as his muscle. That's where I would go with it. But in order to get there, we got to start with Otis and Mandy together once and for all. Moving on, you got your 5-pack challenge. Somebody drank one of the cans already, but we're still going into WrestleMania with a 5-pack. You've got Bayley defending the title. I think this is an elimination 5-pack against Tamina, Naomi, Sasha Banks, and Lacey Evans. Good for Tamina getting that WrestleMania spot. I think that eventually Naomi needs to be SmackDown Women's Champion again. I think Naomi is definitely Naomi's definitely the most popular woman on SmackDown. And I think that she's got the potential to be even bigger. I think, there's so much upside to Naomi. I think that she could be that mainstream women's champion on SmackDown. However, I don't think that this match is the time to do it. I think that this match is very simply Tamina gets eliminated early. Naomi gets eliminated because Sasha Banks and Bayley are double teaming her. Sasha Banks and Bayley are double teaming Lacey Evans, only to have Sasha Banks kick Bayley in the head. What? Lacey Evans pins Bayley, so you have that moment where Bayley just looks at Sasha, and Lacey looks at Sasha, and Lacey looks at Bayley, and when Lacey looks at Bayley, Sasha sneak attacks Lacey Evans, gets the pin on her. Sasha Banks walks out SmackDown Women's Champion. She's turned on Bayley, and we can go forward with Bayley versus Sasha Banks. I think Sasha Banks should be SmackDown Women's Champion. I think that Sasha Banks is really good as a heel, but she shouldn't have friends if she's going to be a heel. And, I think that people are really waiting for that. People are waiting to have a Sasha Banks-Bayley main roster rivalry that they can actually sink their teeth into. And this is one that you could tell that story. I mean, I've hearkened back before to TakeOver Brooklyn 1 and the match that Bayley and Sasha Banks put on. I think if you've got a good guy Bayley who is not a cartoon, who is not a side ponytail hugger, who is just Bayley, and a bad guy Sasha Banks, I think you're into something. And then after that, I think it's the time where we bring Naomi in to do this, But yeah, I mean, I would have this match designed specifically for the Sasha Banks and Bayley tandem to collapse. Moving on, you got the SmackDown Tag Team Championship Triple Threat Ladder match, which I don't really want to get too deep into because every dirt sheet website is saying that this match ain't happening as it is. That it'll be changed. It'll be either a singles match or some kind of other triple threat match. But that match, as we see it, apparently is not going to happen. I think it could be a moment for Kofi to have another moment of glory, but he hasn't had a moment of glory since October when he lost to Brock Lesnar. So, I mean, I feel like we've seen the New Day and we've seen the Usos as tag team champions a million times. And I feel like at this point, if you were to take the tag titles off The Miz and Morrison, they haven't done anything as tag champions. So this whole title reign will have been a pointless endeavor if you take the titles off Miz and Morrison at WrestleMania. So we'll see. I mean, again, it's all completely up in the air since apparently this match, as it looks, isn't happening. But I don't know. I don't know for sure. And I wouldn't be surprised, by the way, if there are a lot of changes in what we saw. I wouldn't be surprised if there's a lot that gets mixed up as we go. Who knows? No spoilers have really gotten out other than the changes here. And I think the changes that did get out were probably leaked on purpose. So, and I say that because none of the results are out. You've got the Intercontinental Championship match, Daniel Bryan versus Sami Zayn. I love the way this thing has been built. This is the match that one of the matches that I have pure faith in can still be great in an empty building. I think this should be happening on a grappling mat, as I've said before on the podcast, in a gym somewhere, but it's not. However, I do think that you've got Drew Gulak in the corner of Daniel Bryan, but in the corner of Sami Zayn, of course, Cesaro and Shinsuke Nakamura. I think this is one of them that the bad guy should win. I think that Sami Zayn losing the Intercontinental title right now would probably fall in line with what I said about Miz and Morrison. It would feel very transitional champion to have Sami Zayn lose the title. Look, it has never fully been settled why Braun Strowman lost the Intercontinental title to begin with. The reign was very short. And then to have that story kind of taper out and be replaced with this one, if Sami Zayn were to lose that title, you had a nice reign with Shinsuke Nakamura, but you had a very quick reign with Braun Strowman. If you then followed that up with a very quick Sami Zayn reign, you start to lose track of even who's Intercontinental champion. I think that Sami Zayn being the Intercontinental champion adds a lot to the Shinsuke Nakamura, Cesaro, Sami Zayn package. I think it adds a lot to Sami Zayn as a performer, and I think that he should keep the title. I don't think Daniel Bryan stands to benefit whatsoever from having the Intercontinental Championship. I think that if you announce tomorrow that Daniel Bryan is actually not going to be in this match, he'll be in the Universal title match with Goldberg, everybody would be like, yep, and I hope he wins. I think at this point in his career, Daniel Bryan is kind of above titles and whatnot. I don't think it matters. So I think this should be Sami Zayn. I think he should cheat to win. And yeah, I think that that's what makes sense to me. Moving on. This match is a match that I think so far has and will continue to benefit in an empty building. And I'm telling you right now, I know that if this match were happening in a stadium and the promos leading up to this match had happened in arenas with an audience, I would not care about this match whatsoever. I did not care about this storyline before we were seeing... I didn't care about this storyline before this match was announced. This match was one of the matches announced after the Full Sail, the Performance Center shows started. I didn't care about the story. I cared about it at the very beginning when Seth first turned heel and he was revealed in the van. But all those multi-person tag matches, all the confrontations that they had, I just didn't care. I cared about Seth Rollins as a character. I somewhat cared about Kevin Owens as a good guy character, but I did not care about this match. I started caring about this match 1 week ago Monday when Seth Rollins delivered the promo of a lifetime when he said that Kevin Owens is a failure at WrestleMania and all he does is shine and have moments there. And then I doubled down and cared even more when I heard Kevin Owens' promo on Raw this week. When Kevin Owens was breaking down exactly who Seth Rollins was. And Kevin Owens was breaking down what the feeling on Seth Rollins was before, when the Performance Center first started. And the history that has been built into this match, I don't think that history would be able to build into this match if we were being distracted by fans saying what. I just think this is one of those stories that benefited greatly from no fans being in the audience. And I think because of that, the story of this match will be better without an audience. I have 100% faith in these two to be able to pull off an empty building match. And yeah. And I think that this is, it's got to be all Kevin Owens, right? Like, you can't go on television and say Kevin Owens is a WrestleMania failure and then have him fail at WrestleMania. I mean, I guess you can, because then he actually is a failure and you weren't lying, so I guess you could. But I think we've put Kevin Owens into this position where he needs to win, and he should win, I don't think Seth Rollins is moving on to face, well, I mean, I guess if Drew McIntyre were to win the WWE Championship, I guess Seth Rollins could be the next guy. But I don't think people want to see Seth Rollins in a title match right now. I don't think people were thrilled with him as the Universal Champion. So I don't think that there's an eagerness to see him competing for the WWE Championship right now. And because of that, I think it would be safe for him to lose this match. And, I think Kevin Owens could probably use the boost. So, all Kevin Owens, and I'm anticipating the match. I'm also anticipating this one. I think that at this point in the Undertaker's career, a street fight is good for him. I think that AJ Styles can pull off any match at any time. He's one of the greatest. Like I said, AJ's promo kind of was what it was last week. But this week, the Undertaker's promo was killer. It was awesome. And, I think that people say, oh, well, then this is going to be the American Badass Undertaker, not the Dead Man Undertaker. But I think there's this other version of the Undertaker. I think there's this version of the Undertaker. Keep in mind, there have been so many versions of the Undertaker besides American Badass Undertaker. There was Ministry of Darkness Undertaker. There was Corporate Ministry Undertaker. There was kind of like Deadwood-looking Undertaker when he first came back at WrestleMania 20. There was MMA Undertaker when he dropped the leather pants and started wearing tights and a tank top and MMA gloves. There's Purple Gloves Good Guy Undertaker. There's Gray Gloves Bad Guy Undertaker. There's Leather Daddy Survivor Series 96 Undertaker. There's a ton of different evolutions of the Undertaker character. And I think that we're going to see just another evolution of it at WrestleMania in this Boneyard match. I think that it's going to be just a more human version of the Dead Man. It's in a boneyard, which I'm imagining is a cemetery. There was a tombstone on Raw. So I took that to mean a boneyard and a cemetery are basically the same thing. But I don't know for sure. So I'm interested to see what it is. And I wonder, too, I wonder if they'll film it cinematically. I wonder if this will look more like a movie than a match. I don't think that would be the worst idea in the world. I think that if you're ever going to be experimental with stuff like this, now is the time. I think that there's no doubt that The Undertaker should win this match. I don't think that AJ Styles, it detracts from him really to lose to The Undertaker at this point. And yeah, I mean, I think if you're going to beat The Undertaker, it should feel like it's at least an attempt at making your career. So far, at WrestleMania, 2 guys have beaten The Undertaker at WrestleMania. One of them is Brock Lesnar. That made him. One of them is Roman Reigns, and that was at least an attempt to make him. So, I don't think that AJ Styles is in that type of a position. So, I don't think that there's any reason for AJ Styles to win that match at WrestleMania. You got Raw Women's Championship on the line, Becky Lynch versus Shayna Baszler. All week I've been going back and forth with this, man. I mean, if you really want Shayna Baszler to look like a monster, she should win. However, and, Becky Lynch on our podcast on Monday made it seem like she wasn't main eventing. She also made it, I think she said on another interview that she thinks this match is happening on Saturday. We know the Kevin Owens-Seth Rollins match is happening on Saturday because Kevin Owens mentioned it. That's all we know right now in terms of scheduling. But I would imagine that this match isn't going on last. I don't think you could justify this match going on last either night. There's enough main events. I mean, with 16 announced matches, I put this at number 11. There's 5 matches that I put above this one, at least. And I was being generous. I think you could easily argue that the Undertaker AJ Styles match is above this one too. So that would be 6. I think that you want, if you're going on last, of course Becky has to win. Because you're going to end WrestleMania either night with Shayna Baszler holding the Raw Women's Championship. But the fact that this match probably is not going on last would lead me to believe that there is much more of a chance for Shayna Baszler to win the Raw Women's Championship. I think the way Shayna Baszler has been displayed, let's keep in mind, Paul Heyman is running Raw. Paul Heyman is responsible for a lot of the portrayal of Brock Lesnar, shall we say, and what made Brock Lesnar. And I think he might see a lot of that in Shayna Baszler as well. Brock Lesnar doesn't lose much. I would imagine maybe Shayna Baszler won't lose much. So the idea of Shayna Baszler ending Becky Lynch's year-long Raw Women's title reign, that she won at WrestleMania 35 only to lose it at WrestleMania 36, I think that's very possible. But at the same time, if Shayna Baszler beats Becky Lynch, all that's left is for Becky Lynch to get a rematch and beat Shayna Baszler and win the title back. If Becky Lynch were to win and just barely squeak by, Shayna Baszler can come back. Shayna Baszler can go on another streak of beating everybody and then come back and beat Becky Lynch. I actually think that long-term, it will benefit Shayna Baszler more if she loses to Becky Lynch at WrestleMania. Just barely loses to Becky Lynch at WrestleMania. Maybe she has Becky in a submission and then Becky rolls on top of her and gets to pin her. You know what I mean? It should be one of those losses like Brock Lesnar's first UFC fight against Frank Mir, where Brock lost the match. He tapped out, but he was really impressive leading up to the tap out. And the only reason that he tapped out was because it was his first fight and he pulled a move where he just had his foot placed poorly, and it was a move of inexperience. And people kind of forgave it and said, yeah, but he was still way better than I thought he would be. Frank Mir was on the ground when that happened. And I think that that's kind of the vibe. I think you want a Frank Mir, Becky Lynch here. I think that you want to leave this match going Becky Lynch is still the champion, but Shayna Baszler is going to be a real problem for a lot of people. That's how I would see this one ending. You got The Fiend, Bray Wyatt, versus John Cena inside the Firefly Funhouse. Not the venue that I would put it in. I would keep it in the ring and keep it serious. But still, I'm really looking forward to this match. And that's one I think that will be theatrical. There's so much creativity in all of the Fiend stuff, and John Cena is smart enough to probably not put himself in something that looks hokey. So my expectations are still definitely high for this match. I think things could change on SmackDown because you're going to have a confrontation. John Cena will be on SmackDown. So this may evolve and my opinions of it may shift, but they're already high. And I think that this is absolutely the spot for The Fiend to kind of make up for anything that he lost by losing the Universal Championship. I think they've done a great job of not mentioning The Fiend was ever Universal Champion. I think they've done a great job of never mentioning the fact that Goldberg beat him. It's the thing that I said they should do from the beginning. It's what they're doing because they listen to yours truly, the last professional broadcaster, Scoops Roberts. So, yeah, I think that this is going to be all Fiend. I think that, I mean, I don't think he'll be just like, destroy him. But I think the Fiend will definitely win. I think he needs to win. I think that this is Bray's make good. This is that moment. I mean, to this day, literally on Raw, Paul Heyman brought up the fact that Brock Lesnar beat Hulk Hogan on that one episode of SmackDown. But for the rest of Brock Lesnar's career, he beat Hulk Hogan. That's on his list. I think that this is what Bray needs. Bray needs to be able to say, I beat John Cena. I beat Seth Rollins. I beat John Cena. I beat this guy. I beat that guy. That's what we need to be able to say about The Fiend, and John Cena needs to be on that list. So, but my expectations are high for them being able to pull this one off. Charlotte versus Rhea Ripley, NXT Championship is on the line. I think that this is going to be the women's match that steals the show. I think the 5-pack challenge, I don't think it'll be bad, but it'll just be what it is. I think Becky versus Shayna will be good, but I think Rhea Ripley versus Charlotte will be the one that people leave talking about. And I think that Charlotte needs to leave WrestleMania the NXT Women's Champion. I know that logic would dictate that Charlotte here is being used to put over the new talent, which is the most valuable way to use Charlotte, that Rhea Ripley is the future. She's like 23 years old. The fans love her. Her matches are great. Obviously, we should bring her to WrestleMania so she shines. If she wins, it shines on all of NXT, and that's what we need to do. However, and I talked about this on Monday on the podcast, I really think that this needs to be about Charlotte. Charlotte, to me, I mean, I guess she won the women's championship at WrestleMania 32 in Dallas. But since WrestleMania 32, this is how Charlotte's been used. Even last year, WrestleMania 35, Charlotte was really used as a person. I mean, that was her role. She was a heel because it was like, well, Charlotte, it's almost like she's too good. She's the John Cena of this thing. But for some reason with Charlotte, they don't have the same thing that they have with John Cena or with Roman Reigns, where it's like, no, they don't lose. And they're not going to turn heel. Charlotte will turn heel, will turn face on the drop of a dime, and she loses all the time. There's something about that Flair DNA. Because it's in the Flair DNA that a Flair, except maybe not David so much, but of Charlotte Flair and Ric Flair, because they can lose, and they're so good that it doesn't matter, they end up losing all the time. And I don't think that that's something that should be taken advantage of. It makes me feel like people are being taken for granted. And I feel like Charlotte losing this match is taking Charlotte for granted. I think Charlotte won the Royal Rumble. I think she should win the NXT Women's Championship. I think that Charlotte winning the NXT Women's Championship and then going to NXT with it puts more eyes on NXT than Rhea Ripley having a great match at WrestleMania and then bringing the title back to NXT. I think on Wednesday when we're watching an NXT 6-way women's ladder match and we know that the winner is going to fight Charlotte at some point for that NXT Women's Championship, I think it creates an entirely new dynamic. I think that Charlotte, we were talking about Shayna Baszler being booked like Brock Lesnar. I think Charlotte can be the women's Brock Lesnar of the NXT brand. I think that Charlotte can be somebody who takes the NXT women's title hostage. Charlotte can be an enemy of the entire roster. And you can sit there and you can have, Bianca Belair's got a problem with Charlotte. If Rhea Ripley loses to Charlotte, Rhea Ripley's got a problem with Charlotte. Let's say Bianca doesn't win the ladder match. Let's say somebody else wins the ladder match. Could be anybody. Let's say Tegan Nox wins the ladder match. Now Tegan Nox could have a problem with Charlotte. You know what I mean? You've got a lot built in that people would really care about. And every match that Charlotte had on NXT would be a big deal. So I think that there is actually more upside. And Rhea Ripley can get it back. Rhea Ripley can get that win back. This wouldn't be a burial of Rhea Ripley. This wouldn't be the end of Rhea by any stretch of the imagination, especially if the match was really good. Do I think that Charlotte is going to win? I can't say that I think Charlotte is going to win, but I think Charlotte should win. I think that would make for a more interesting NXT and WWE, quite frankly. And then she's still a Raw athlete. She's showing up on Raw every week with the NXT Women's Championship. That's just a commercial for Wednesday nights on the USA Network, which I think is a pretty valuable thing to do with your Monday Night Raw TV time. We move on to the match that I believe will steal the show at WrestleMania. We move on to the match that I've said before, and I will say again, will be better in an empty arena than it would have been in a stadium. We move on to Edge versus Randy Orton, last man standing. This is not going to be a match. This is going to be a movie. This is going to be something that people talk about for years to come. We can talk about this WrestleMania and how our expectations are low and how there's no audience and how it's not going to be the same. Mark my words. Edge versus Randy Orton, last man standing, WrestleMania 36, will be on WrestleMania highlight reels for the rest of eternity. We'll be looking at Rock Austin. We'll be looking at Rock Hogan. We'll be looking at Lesnar Angle. We will be looking outside of a stadium into an empty building at Edge versus Randy Orton. I am not convinced, by the way. If you told Edge versus Randy Orton, last man standing, in a stadium, is not guaranteed to be on best of WrestleMania compilations for the rest of time, by any stretch of the imagination. No, it is not. Edge, Randy Orton, last man standing, empty performance center, I guarantee that match will be on WrestleMania best of reels forever. It's going to be the best match on the show, and it is going to be better without an audience. The promos that these two have had, this match was already the best built match going into WrestleMania. The promos got 2,000 times better when the people went home. When this thing actually got personal. Randy Orton had already RKO'd Beth Phoenix. Edge had already come back and said, hey, I am super pissed that you RKO'd my wife. But it didn't feel real. It didn't feel personal until the audience went home and Edge talked directly to camera. And then just when we thought that was a one-time thing, Randy comes back the next week and, reminds the world with a promo, not even a match, with a promo. Reminds the world, oh yeah, you know how I've been around all this time? You must have forgotten. I'm one of the best to ever do this. And then Edge comes back with that backstage promo on Raw this week. And you go, oh my God. I thought I couldn't be more into this match. And I am. The wrestling world, the WWE universe, talks about their disgust for part-timers. Brock Lesnar is a heel because he is a part-timer. But there is so much care about this Edge Randy Orton story that it doesn't even matter that Edge returned at the Royal Rumble and hasn't wrestled since. And I've seen criticisms about my opinion that Edge versus Randy Orton will be better in an empty building than it will be in a stadium. And that criticism is, well, you're not going to get the pop. How would you ever say that's better when this is going to be Edge's return match at WrestleMania and the moment would have been the pop? That's my whole point, you moron. If Edge versus Randy Orton took place in a stadium, the match would have been about the pop. The match would have been about Edge's entrance. The match would have been about how excited everyone was to see Edge. When the Hardy Boys came back to WrestleMania, do you even remember who they fought? Do you even remember? Can you name every team that was in that ladder match? That match was about the pop. That, the Hardy Boys returning at WrestleMania 34 or 33 in Orlando was about the moment, was about the fans realizing that the Hardy Boys were there. It was about the first couple beats of that song, boo-doo, 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 and the fans losing their minds. That's all it was about. Edge versus Randy Orton in a stadium. The biggest moment of that match is, you think you know me. On this day. Yeah! Edge versus Randy Orton in an empty building. It's not about Edge's return. It's not about people are excited to see Edge. It's not about Randy, being at a different level. It's about the match. It's about the story. We've now gotten rid of all the nonsense. And we're ready for two of the greatest professional wrestlers of all time to tell one of the best stories that WrestleMania has had in years. And that is going to happen because, not in spite of, because it's in an empty building. The best thing that ever happened to Edge and Randy Orton is that WrestleMania was moved to the Performance Center. You could say I'm crazy. You could be mad because I called you a moron a minute ago, and I apologize for that. But I'm not wrong. I'm not. And I believe that you will see that either on Saturday or Sunday, probably Sunday, because this is going to be the best match of WrestleMania. And this is going to go next year when the WWE Network puts out another compilation of the best however many matches from WrestleMania history. This is the one match from this show that will be on it. My opinion. Okay, next ball up. We've got our two, and the only reason that match wasn't number one is because, as a traditionalist, I put the two title matches as the number 1 and 2 matches for WrestleMania this year. Universal title match, Roman Reigns versus Goldberg, match not happening. I'm not telling tales out of school here. I'm not reading rumor reports. I just follow Roman Reigns on Instagram. Roman Reigns made it clear he is not performing at WrestleMania this year. Health concerns, Roman Reigns is immunocompromised. Anybody that is not sympathetic to what Roman Reigns is going through, anybody that's sitting there going like, if you cheered Roman Reigns when he came back from cancer and you are not okay with the fact that he decided I'm not performing at WrestleMania in the middle of a pandemic that strikes people who have compromised immune systems, then you're a dickhead. You are. I believe Roman Reigns is totally within his right to not do this show. I'm bummed for Roman's sake. I would rather see him win the Universal Championship this way against Goldberg, but it is what it is. I'm not anyway about it. There are rumors going around as to who's going to replace Roman Reigns. Some people on the internet think that it's Braun Strowman. Others, who knows? Nobody knows. I don't know for sure. Maybe some people know for sure. I don't know for sure. But I think if it's Braun Strowman, I think he should beat Goldberg. I think whoever it is should beat Goldberg for the Universal Championship. And if it is Braun Strowman, I think that makes a hell of a compelling story, that you can have Roman Reigns come back at SummerSlam or whenever we're out of this mess and get his title match against Braun Strowman. And maybe Braun Strowman turns heel. Maybe he makes Roman work for it. Who knows what the way they pull that off. Or maybe they do good guy versus good guy. Who knows? But Braun Strowman is actually owed a championship title run, in my opinion, anyway. But even if it wasn't Braun, whoever it is, I hope he beats Goldberg. And I think we'll surely find out who it is on SmackDown. People think it's a little weird that they didn't announce immediately, well, Roman Reigns is out of WrestleMania. But, it's storytelling, guys. Why don't we take a beat and let WWE tell their story here? Well, it's false advertising. Well, you have the network already, so relax. I think that we'll probably find out on Friday who Roman Reigns' replacement is going to be, and I think that we should just let WWE tell their story. I don't think there's anything wrong with that. And the last match, the main event, is Drew McIntyre versus Brock Lesnar. Paul Heyman delivered a hell of a promo to close Raw. bringing up the go-home show. A little bit of breaking of the fourth wall. Lots of fourth wall breaking. Edge and Orton aren't really breaking the fourth wall. AJ and Undertaker are breaking the fourth wall. Paul Heyman breaking the fourth wall a little bit. But, this is a really interesting one. Because in a stadium, there's not even a conversation here. In a stadium, clearly, this is Drew McIntyre's match. You wouldn't even, if you're going to sit, if I had somebody on this podcast that wanted to debate me and say, well, I don't know, what if Brock Lesnar, then that's I don't even want to, this is stupid. I don't want to have this podcast. I mean, Brock Lesnar is the quintessential character you can never count him out. But, of course, Drew McIntyre should beat Brock Lesnar in a stadium. Here's the question. Should Drew McIntyre beat Brock Lesnar in an empty building? Should WrestleMania go out with Drew McIntyre holding up the title, even though there's no fans in the building? I thought about it over the week, and I'm going to tell you the truth. On Monday, I thought Brock Lesnar should keep the title. But today, I feel differently. Today, I feel like let's do it. If we're going to do it, let's do it. And let's do it artistically. Let's have the commentators working their asses off to sell us on this match. Let's have Lesnar and Drew do what they do. And let's end WrestleMania 36 on a good note. And let's have Drew McIntyre win the title. I say just put it on him. I think even without the pop, you can still make it work. I think that you have a choice here. You can either, if Brock Lesnar wins the match, I feel like you're letting WrestleMania be a placeholder and just delaying the inevitable shining moment for Drew McIntyre. I think if Drew McIntyre wins the title, then you're saying, look, say what you want about this, but this is WrestleMania. This is the real deal. This is the real WrestleMania, and Drew McIntyre just won the title. I think it's Drew's time. And as we get closer to WrestleMania, I say put the title on Drew. It doesn't ruin Paul Heyman's spoiler prediction thing, because what he said on Raw was that Brock Lesnar would have the title going into WrestleMania next year. He could win the title next February and still go into WrestleMania as the champion next year. So I think Drew McIntyre walks out of WrestleMania WWE champion. I think that that's the way to go. And that's the way I'm going, man. I am optimistic about WrestleMania. I am looking forward to this weekend. I am looking forward to escaping news about a global pandemic for 2 nights and just enjoying the show that WWE is putting on for me. I'm going to eat bad food. I'm going to drink soda pop. I'm going to watch WrestleMania on the WWE Network. And I'm going to have a good time doing it. I think it'll be great.